She said it quietly, somewhere between a spoonful of dinner and the last sip of wine, as if the words were just another part of the evening routine and carried no particular weight. I remember the sound of my fork hitting the plate being louder than her voice. "I need to tell you something." I thought she was going to talk about work, about her new coworker, or maybe about the discount on that coffee machine we'd been considering. I wasn't prepared for what came next. "I cheated on you." She said it evenly, calmly, almost as if she had practiced the line. The word cheated landed on the table like a heavy object, something you couldn't ignore, even if you tried. For a moment, it felt like the walls of our apartment shifted a few centimeters inward. The ceiling dropped lower. Instead of asking a question, I let out this strange, nervous laugh, one of those involuntary reactions when your brain refuses to process reality. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and waiting, as if expecting an outburst. But I was silent. We had been together for nearly 7 years. 7 years that, to me, felt like a stable road we built side by side. Jobs, an apartment, trips, late-night talks about books and music, the tiny habits we shared, her stroking my cheek when I fell asleep first, me handing her boots on rainy days. I thought I knew her, and maybe she thought she knew me. Our everyday life had become a routine of trust. She told the story chronologically, without dramatic detail, which somehow made it worse. She met him at a friend's party. They started by talking about movies, then ended up at the same table at a bar. Then came a few messages, coffee, a theater outing. I was listening, and it became clear that it wasn't really about sex. It was something else, a need that had shifted, an emptiness she filled somewhere outside us. "He listened to me differently," she said. "He listened in a way you haven't in the last 2 years. Part of me wanted names, dates, the exact length of the affair. But another part, the part that hurt more, wondered when exactly the space between us became wide enough for someone else to fit into." Remember the last time she told me something with excitement? The last time we laughed until our chests hurt? I couldn't. We talked for hours. I asked questions in a calm voice, like I was conducting an interview. She answered honestly, and despite everything. I appreciated that. There was no triumph in her tone, no dramatic remorse, just recognition. I made a mistake. I was unhappy. I wanted to feel alive. In her eyes I saw a strange mixture of shame and relief, a combination I still don't completely understand. That night, I barely slept. I walked around the apartment, replaying moments in my head, searching for clues, her quietness, the late nights at work, the messages she hid in her bag. But instead of signs of cheating, I found signs of something else, my own blind spots. How I stopped asking questions, how I mistook her silence for peace, how I preferred the news on TV to listening to her stories. The next day, I met a friend and tried to explain everything. He listened and gave those canned lines. People always give in these situations. It doesn't excuse her. But sometimes people look for comfort where they think they'll find it. You need to understand why it happened. I didn't want cliches. I wanted clarity. Was it a short-lived romance or something deeper? Would she leave me? Was our relationship already over without me knowing? But inside me something else was growing. Not anger, but emptiness. A hollow where she used to be. She asked for time. Not immediate forgiveness, just time to understand what happened and what she wanted. I gave her time, but not comfort. We lived together like people staying on different floors of the same building. Quiet breakfasts, minimal conversations, awkward shared evenings where we exchanged schedules instead of emotions. Sometimes I looked at her and saw the woman I had once loved intensely, but now she felt like a photograph, vivid but flat, untouchable. I'd run my fingers across the memory of who we used to be and feel nothing but distance. Weeks passed. She talked more openly about wanting to understand herself. I wanted to know whether our relationship could be repaired or if it was better to let go. We went to a couples therapist, hoping for structure, hoping someone could help rebuild what was broken. Therapy became the one place where we spoke without attacking, without shutting down. The therapist said things like, cheating is often a symptom, not the cause. Intimacy collapses when routine takes over. Disconnection doesn't happen overnight. It sounded true, painful, but true. She explained that our marriage had fallen into a suffocating silence, not the comforting kind that comes with understanding, but the kind that freezes intimacy. She'd serve dinner, but I'd be mentally absent. She'd tell me something important, but I'd respond half-heartedly or not at all. "You were here," she said, "but not with me." Her words felt like knives, but also like mirrors. When had I stopped being curious about her inner world? When had I chosen work, news, or exhaustion over listening? We had both contributed to the distance, me, with my emotional neglect, her, with her escape to someone else. Understanding didn't erase the pain, but it gave it shape. It wasn't just her betrayal. It was our collapse. You were here, she said, but not with me. Her words felt like knives, but also like mirrors. When had I stopped being curious about her inner world? When had I chosen work, news, or exhaustion over listening? We had both contributed to the distance, me, with my emotional neglect, her, with her escape to someone else. Understanding didn't erase the pain, but it gave it shape. It wasn't just her betrayal. It was our collapse. One night, after another long silence, she played me a voice recording. It was her talking to herself, explaining how lonely she'd felt, how disconnected, how unseen. Listening to it felt like being punched and hugged at the same time. I heard not just sadness, but a desperate need to be heard. For the first time, I felt responsible not only for my hurt, but for the void that made her vulnerable. We decided to try again, not because forgiveness was easy, but because neither of us wanted to throw away the years we had built. We made small commitments, writing letters to express feelings instead of accusations, scheduling evenings without phones, bringing back rituals we'd abandoned, Sunday morning reading under the blankets, evening walks, museums. She cut off all contact with the man, not because I demanded it, but because she wanted our rebuilding to be honest. Still, parts of me felt dead. I couldn't forget the images my mind created. Her holding someone else, laughing with someone else. Sometimes those images attacked at random moments, during dinner, during a soft touch, during a quiet night. But instead of burying it, I learned to say it aloud. Not as a weapon, but as a truth. It mattered. It made healing possible. Months passed. Small things began to shift. She asked about my day with genuine interest. I stopped feeling obligated to respond instantly to messages. We discussed boundaries. What is harmless? What is flirting? Where the line is, not as punishment, but as protection. We were learning each other again, almost like strangers starting over. Half a year later, something happened that tested everything. We ran into the man she had cheated with, by chance, at a professional event. My chest tightened instantly. I watched every detail, her posture, her smile, her voice. She gripped my hand tightly. Her fingers dug into mine. There was no spark in her eyes when she saw him. It surprised me, not the lack of spark, but my own reaction. I didn't break. I felt steady, worn out, but standing. Not everything became perfect afterward. Trust, once broken, doesn't magically reconstruct itself. Sometimes, late at night, doubts resurfaced. Sometimes she feared I would leave. We made a pact. If something worries us, we talk. If we feel distance, we talk. If one of us feels insecure, we talk. Raw honesty became our new foundation. A year passed. We didn't go back to who we were. Maybe that's the point. We became to different people, more attentive, more aware, more deliberate. She learned to express her needs. I learned to listen. Our connection wasn't a restored antique. It was rebuilt, redesigned, and reshaped from the ruins. Imperfect, fragile, real. Sometimes I think about how easy it is to overlook the small things. How easy it is to let trust rot silently. Her cheating was a brutal lesson, not an excuse, not a justification, but a wake-up call for both of us. I remember one evening when we sat on the balcony, looking at the glowing windows across the street. The wind moved the leaves softly. A motorcycle roared somewhere far away. She reached over and held my hand. I didn't pull away. The silence between us wasn't hollow anymore. It was expectant, hopeful. She cheated on me. This fact doesn't disappear. But what followed, the conversations, the honesty, the choices, made something new possible. We could have ended. We could have shut down. We could have become strangers living under the same roof. Instead, we chose the harder path, to stay, to rebuild, to grow, not because we defeated pain, but because we refused to stop trying. Sometimes, that's the greatest act of love, choosing to stay when leaving is easier.